The Witch of Blackbird Pond, Chapter 9, Part 1. Good children must fear God all day. Parents obey, no false things say, by no sin stray. 6 voices chanted the words in unison. 2 small heads bent earnestly over each of the 3 dog-eared primers, which were all the dame school could boast. That's fine, praised Kit. Now go on. Love Christ alway, in secret pray, mind a little play, make no delay in doing good. At the opposite end of the kitchen, Mercy, having generously allotted to Kit the primer readers, was laboring with the beginners. They sat hunched on the bench, each holding in hand a horn book, a small, stout-handled wooden slab, on which was fastened a tiny sheet of paper, protected by a thin strip of transparent horn, held in place by a narrow leather strip and tiny brass nails. At the top of the single page was printed the alphabet, and at the bottom the Lord's Prayer. The children wore their horns strung on cords around their necks. Now they squinted at the blurred letters and painfully repeated out loud, A, F, 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 A, Fa, A, L, All, L, A, La. What patience Mercy had! If only patience were contagious like mumps. Kit sighed and turned back to the primer. Of all the dreary, monotonous sermons, Grandfather would never have allowed her to learn from such a book. She wished she could remember how her grandfather had taught her the syllables and words. She suspected that he had made up his own lessons, and now, as her small pupils spelled out the gloomy text, she could not resist following his example. She seized a quill pen and printed 2 lines on a scrap of the curly birch bark which the children collected to use in place of costly paper. She passed the little scroll to young Timothy Cook. Timothy Cook jumped over the brook, he read with astonishment. The other children giggled. Write one about me, begged a dark-eyed little girl. Kit thought a moment and then printed, Charity Hughes has new red shoes. The 6 children followed every motion of her quill in breathless eagerness. The 6 children followed every motion of her quill with breathless eagerness. Kit had no idea that her methods were novel and surprising. She only knew that the past 10 days since the dame school had begun had been the pleasantest she had known in Connecticut. She and the children had taken to each other at first sight. Kit felt at ease with them as she had never managed to do with their elders. The children admired her pretty clothes. They brought her strawberries and daisies. They argued over who would sit next to her, and every day they waited with delighted expectation to see what she would do and say next. There were 11 of them in all. 8 small boys and 3 girls, ranging from 4 to 7 years in age. Sober little adults, they had appeared on that first day, dressed in fashions much like their parents. One of them, to Kit's amusement, had given his name as Jonathan Ashby, a serious, stocky, small edition of his brother William. But as their shyness wore off, so did their solemnness. They sat crowded together on the 2 long benches that Matthew had provided by the simple method of laying planks on rough wooden cross pieces. There was a daily scrambling for favored positions on the bench. If 2 or 3 of the heavier boys could band together at one end, they could make precarious sitting for the unlucky female at the other end. Altogether, it took alertness and patience to keep those restless little bodies still for 4 long hours at a stretch. While Kit resorted to ingenious tricks, Mercy possessed the patience. Kit marveled at the ease and gentleness with which Mercy controlled her charges. Her warm, sweet voice never raised, her lovely composure never ruffled. Now, as the chanting syllables came to an end, Mercy met Kit's eyes across the room and smiled. You have all done very well this morning, she said. Now we will repeat the first part of the catechism, and the Mistress Tyler will tell you a story. Mercy worried about this indulgence, which had begun by accident on the 2nd day, and proved such a success that she had weakly allowed it to continue. Was it right, she questioned Kit, to bribe children into good behavior by these stories? That was not the way the schoolmaster enforced discipline. But Kit could see nothing wrong in a reward at the end of the day's work. Truth to tell, she looked forward to the story as eagerly as the children. If only she had more to read them. Last week she had told them the story of Pilgrim's Progress, drawing on every detail she could remember. What would she have given for that much-loved volume that had lain on Grandfather's table? But in a week's time she had stretched her memory to the utmost, and Pilgrim had traveled all the way from the slough of Despond to the celestial city. Now she had only the Bible to read to them, but there was far more between those black covers than the verses Uncle Matthew favored. Kit chose the stories she herself enjoyed the most, and her reading had a zest and liveliness that enthralled the children. Even Mercy was surprised and frequently a little disturbed at the drama that Kit seemed to discover in these long, familiar narratives. Today, she chose the parable of the Good Samaritan. Now a certain man, she began, went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves. Suddenly, she had an inspiration. Years ago, her grandfather had taken her to see a masque in Bridgetown, in which a troupe of players from England had acted out the ancient Christmas story. "I have an idea," she cried, laying down the book. 11 small faces turned toward her eagerly. It had not taken them long to discover that Kit's ideas usually meant something new and exciting. "You all know the story, don't you?" The heads nodded earnestly. "Then instead of my reading it to you, let's pretend that it is happening right now to us. Let's pretend that this room is the road to Jericho. One of you, Peter, will be the certain man traveling along the road. You can walk down between these benches like this, and 3 of you can be the robbers that set on him and strip him of his raiment and wound him. Martha and Eliza, you can be the priest and the Levite who pass by on the other side and just look at him and turn up your noses. And Jonathan can be the Good Samaritan who finds him and binds up his wounds. Charity, you can be the innkeeper over here by the fireplace, and the Samaritan will bring the travelers to you to take care of." "Kit," broke in Mercy anxiously, "I've never heard of anything like that before. Are you sure?" "Oh, Mercy, it's from the Bible. Now each of you, try to imagine just how you'd feel if you really were those people. Just make believe this isn't a room at all. It's a hot, dusty road, and Peter, you are getting very tired from walking so far." The children were entranced. A game of pretending in school. They took their places, jabbering with excitement. Charity picked up the broom by the hearth and began to sweep. "An innkeeper is busy all the time," she said importantly. Jonathan Ashby stood stolidly beside Mercy, waiting for his chance to be the rescuer. Peter began his long journey between the benches. But Kit had made one mistake. She had picked her characters too hastily. By chance, she had chosen the 3 most obstreperous pupils in the school to be her thieves and robbers, and the hapless boy who represented the traveler was the priggish little scholar they most cordially disliked. The unsuspecting traveler fell into his part as conscientiously as he read his primer. He walked primly between the benches from Jerusalem to Jericho. Out from behind the settle propped the robbers and set upon him with a vengeance. "Wait a minute," Kit warned. "Tom, Stephen, we're only pretending." But her warning was lost in the uproar. Such an opportunity, sanctioned by authority, had never been known before. Peter's raiment actually was in danger. His shrieks were genuine. Jonathan, forgetting his role entirely, rushed in with both fists flying. The innkeeper hurried to the wayfarer's defense with her broom. Both Kit and Mercy moved quickly, but not quickly enough. From the corner of her eye, Kit glimpsed the 2 tall figures in the doorway. Then, before she could reach the tussling children, a cane swung from nowhere and landed on an unwary back. A smart crackle of blows, a few agonized howls, and silence and order descended suddenly on the room. Across the subdued children's heads, Kit and Mercy faced their 2 visitors, Mr. Eleazer Kimberly, the schoolmaster, and Reverend John Woolbridge.